and I say this to people, not just in football, outside of football, at work, and you could take this pretty much to any situation, is to learn a little bit more than a little bit about a lot.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
One last thing before we get into today's episode. A lot of people ask how they can support the podcast. Well, I have a couple easy ways. The first way is just listen and subscribe. And another thing you can do is go follow the Roughnecks podcast on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube as well. If you get something out of today's show, then do me a favor. Share it with a friend. If you really want to go above and beyond to support the podcast, then head over to roughneckspodcast.com and get you some of that merch. I appreciate all of the support, but let's get into today's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Roughnecks podcast. Before we dive into today's guest, I just want to remind you guys of a couple things. First, we are doing a giveaway. As some of you know, we have Q&A Fridays on any episode that ends in a 0. So that's like, I believe we have 130 coming up. 130, 140. Any episode that ends at a 0 is Q&A Friday, where me and a guest will sit there and answer your questions from the fans. We are doing a giveaway for people who send in questions before next Q&A Friday episode, which we're getting recorded October 30th probably. And if you send in a question to roughneckspodcast@gmail.com, you're automatically entered into that giveaway before October 30th. So send in your questions. It's very open-ended questions. It could be questions about literally anything. I don't care if it's what is your favorite color. I don't care if it's a super dark, deep question. Ask any type of question, and it will get answered on Q&A Friday. The other thing is that we are also having a little design contest. The fall merch drop is happening in November, which is just next month. I want to release a shirt that is designed by the fans. So come up with a cool design that correlates with the podcast and email that design over to info@roughneckspodcast.com. Entries for that will close on October 28th, and the winner will be announced on Monday, October 31st. All of the proceeds from the design winner's shirt will be donated to a charity of your choice. So, but getting into today's episode, I'm super happy about the guest I have coming on today. But without further ado, Reno Reda, welcome to the Roughnecks podcast.
Cool. Thanks, man. Happy to be on. Thanks for reaching out. Let's do this.
I'm excited about this because, we didn't actually go to high school together. I think you graduated the year before because you were part of Jake. I can't even remember his last name at the moment. Jacob Sanders?
Sanders. Yeah, he was a year younger than I was.
Oh, was he? Okay. So, yeah. He was the last class that graduated right before I became a freshman. So you actually played with my brother, though, I believe, correct?
Yeah, he was a senior when I was a freshman. So you know how it worked with Watkins. Mm-hmm. Freshmen stayed sort of separate, and then seniors went on. But no, Clayton's a good dude, and like we were just talking about beforehand, I keep seeing him, keep having him come over, fix stuff for me too. So.
He's actually been on this podcast. It was he was, I believe, the first ever drinking episode that we did on this because I have Hold My Beer episodes, and I believe he was the first one that did it, and that was a lot of fun. Being able to do a podcast with your brothers also. I've done it with my sisters as well. It's kind of cool, like this podcast where it's gone. I never would have thought I'd be recording with my siblings, but it ended up happening.
Hey, you're right on. Take it.
But I like to kick off every episode allowing the guests to give a background on themselves because I could never do a good enough job. So just kind of tell the Roughnecks listeners who don't know who you are, who Reno Reda is.
Yeah. So, like you said, my name's Reno Reda. I grew up here or in Pataskala, Ohio. Went to Watkins Memorial. Played football there, played baseball there. I wrestled a little bit in middle school. After high school, went on and played football at Penn State. Played there for 5 years, redshirted my first year in. Had a phenomenal time. I played, or I guess in high school, I was sort of a defensive end, tight end, kicker, punter. They moved me in at tackle sometimes. And then at Penn State, which we can get into a little bit, but they kind of, I wouldn't say tricked me a little bit, but they're the ones who offered me a little bit more flexibility, because a lot of the places I was getting recruited at, mostly just all the MAC schools, were saying, "Oh, we want you to play offensive line." And I did not want to play offensive line. Like, I did not want to do it. And Ken's like, "We don't really know what we want you to play." So I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna roll with these guys." So went and played at Kent, ended up sure enough on the offensive line, which is great. Started 4 years at left tackle. Played some phenomenal schools, went through that. Then I have 3 kids now, ages almost 6, 3, and 2. So we are busy. I'm married to Brittany. We were high school sweethearts. So since high school, made it this far. So had to ring her up. So here we are with 3 kids later. But yeah, now I'm working full time at NetJets. So it's the world's largest private jet company is where I'm at now. I've been there since college ended. So a little over 6 years, give or take. Then also Brittany and I do a little side gig on the side. We're both personal trainers. We started our own personal training company just because that's what I went to college for. Was human movement, kinesiology is what I graduated with, and then just sort of carried over through the football ages. I did a lot of internships with our strength program. So that's been a passion of mine, and we'll see where it goes. So far, it's starting to really take off at the moment. So who knows what could happen here in the future.
We're going to kick it off, with all of that. We're going to probably dive into every bit of what you just said. But the first thing I want to talk about is the whole, the Kent State thing, and kind of take me through. You kind of maybe mentioned it, but why Kent State? Because I'm always curious, everybody, especially, I just went to a D3 school, but, you always have like a certain reason why you picked the school you picked. So why did you end up picking Kent State?
Yeah, well, I had most of the MAC come in and offer me. And to be honest with you, if I was waiting on Ohio University to come in and throw me an offer. Both my parents went to OU. My sister went to OU. And my dad actually played football at OU. So I got to go to a lot of the alumni events with him and hang out. I got to meet all the coaches personally. I knew a ton of the coaches. So as I'm getting recruited, I'm like, I want to go to OU. Definitely want to go there. And it just never came. I went to every single one of their camps, and nothing came of it. That's here nor there. And then Kent came along, and it was really interesting. Coach Hazel. He was the head coach out that way, and getting recruited by him, he was probably the most business-oriented coach person that I've dealt with before. And he was just so serious, but he was so lighthearted and truly understood where I was coming from. Coming from a school that didn't have any prior Division I athletes coming out of it, so I was completely fresh. I had no idea how this worked, how scholarship works at the Division I level, anything. And then the coach who actually recruited me was Marcus Freeman, former Buckeye, and now he's the head coach at Notre Dame. And so he'd be the one coming into the high school, pulling me out of class, kind of talking with me. Him and I got a really good relationship, just better than the other coaches that came in from like Akron or BG or any of those guys. And then I went on a official visit up at Kent, and they just welcomed me so much. The incoming freshmen there as well were great. I immediately connected with those guys, so I knew it felt right. Kent felt really good. And then in high school, I played a couple of the All-Star games, played in the North-South game, and a couple of those guys were going to Kent too. Immediately became friends with them. North-South game, then the Big 33, where it's like Ohio versus Pennsylvania type thing. Again, bunch of Kent guys, and that's actually where I met my roommate, Anthony Melchiori. He was funny story about him. He was a 2 or 3 time state wide receiver, first team All-State wide receiver, and he went to Kent and he punted. He was our punter. Fastest dude ever, but him and I became roommates. We were roommates all 4 years. But Kent, that's really the main reason. The coaches who came after me, the official visits, the guys who I met on that, and it felt right. And they were on a roll. They were just getting started. They had really good momentum, so I knew going in there it was going to be a good choice.
You mentioned the whole Watkins, that's the thing about you. Everybody knew about you because of the fact, especially younger, I can speak for, but because you were the one D1 guy that actually went from Watkins from a football that I don't even know if there has been another one and that I can remember, but most, I remember too, my class, we had 8 of us on signing day, Ohio Wesleyan, Worcester, a couple of Ashland, some ODU and some stuff like that. But I want to say that I was the only one who, not to toot my own horn, but I was the only one who stuck it out all 4 years, played all 4 years. And there's different, everybody has their own circumstances, things happen, but it's Watkins is not known to send big college high college athletes to D1 schools, and you were just one of the ones that I think a lot of people looked up to on the young, from our younger classes, because of the fact that it made it seem, for sometimes I feel like people thought it was impossible to get out of Watkins and go D1, when the reality is you have to put in the work. It's not easy per se, and because you said nobody really knows how to deal with it at Watkins because it's not something that they've really been through. It's not, you don't have it a whole lot, but you were kind of an inspiration to, I feel a lot of the younger kids, all right, he can go do one. It's something that is possible. It kind of gave people faith, gave people hope that it is something that is possible to do.
Yeah. And that was a big thing, just trying to be a trailblazer for it. And really, because like I said earlier, I had no idea how it worked. When they called me and they're like, hey, we want to offer you a scholarship. I'm like, okay, how much? And they're like, no, it's a Division I scholarship. It's a full ride. I literally had no idea how any of it worked. So it was cool. And it's cool just seeing the younger guys, like you said, and just talking about it and expectations, because I coached for Watkins for a little while too, and setting the proper things. Kids will be like, well, I just want to play offense, I just want to play defense, I just want to do this. If you're in high school and you're trying to make it, you play all. You don't come off the field. If you have a chance to get on the field, you better be on the field. There is no one-way athletes unless you're a stud quarterback or something. But there is no one way in order to make it, especially in high school, and especially at a smaller school. You got to stand out. Having a two-way, sort of mindset, and showing coaches that you could play both ways and be on the field for a lot of times, it's just going to make you stand out. But it's cool to see a ton of the younger. I try to make it to as many games as I can. It's tough with the kids, and just being around those guys too. Coaching was phenomenal. I coached 3 years for Watkins, then took another position at my job, so that kind of cut me out of the coaching aspect of it. But it was so much fun, man. I say it all the time. You can take all the big games that I played, the Alabamas, the LSUs, the Ohio States. I would trade those in if I could go back and play Friday Night Lights again. That.
There's nothing better.
It is something crazy.
It's something that you experience, and you can't even explain the feeling that you get when you play on a Friday night. Because I'll never forget my first, being a sophomore. I was lucky enough. The first game, I think we played Briggs or somebody, one of the Columbus schools that honestly wasn't very good, and we were beating them, but not killing them at halftime. And I remember Warrington coming up to me and goes, "Hey, you're going in at will," and I was like, "What?" I was just a sophomore replacing a junior, and the game wasn't out of reach, and I was just like, "What just happened?" But I remember that feeling of going in on a Friday night, and it's just when you're out there, and it is the most fun. I feel I remember more stuff from Friday night games than I do Saturday afternoon games in college. I don't. It's just because you grew up with those kids and you played with those kids for so long, and you know them, and you truly, I feel you have a better relationship. Yeah, you're around your college guys, I feel a lot more outside of football, but it's just a whole different feeling playing on Friday nights.
It really is. And then because like our stands weren't huge, but when they would fill up, like there was no other feeling than being out there under the lights. It's the end of the week. You wear your jersey to school, like all that kind of stuff. It just the build up all week. It's so much fun.
It really is. But you ended up getting redshirted your first year at Kent State. So kind of take me through. I mean, you probably didn't quite understand that either, but like, what's the redshirt process like? Like, why do they redshirt people? Like, I feel like if you're a football-minded person, you understand why they redshirt people, but kind of like why they redshirted you and like how that went, like how that goes being a redshirt throughout the year.
Yep. So the main reason I got redshirted was because I was way too light to be an offensive lineman. Because again, they weren't really sure. They were telling me they weren't sure what they wanted me to play. So all winter, all summer, I'm out there doing pass rush drills. I'm running routes because I don't know if I'm going to go in at DN, if I'm going to tight end, what they're doing, and I wasn't trying to gain weight. So I walked into Kent at about I think I was 240 when I walked into Kent, and then they're like, "Yep, offensive line, you're going to be a tackle." I'm like, "All right," and those first couple practices, I was like, these dudes are huge, like in high school, I'm used to being I was used to being the dominant one. I can, it didn't matter who lined up against me. Like I was going to win. And then walking into Kent, I'm like, oh, these guys are D1 players too. And they're a lot bigger now. And they've had experience. These are true, like they're grown up men. And so yeah, I was real light. So that redshirt year was just gain as much weight as I possibly could, get as strong as I could, as quickly as I can, because I had an advantage. I was faster than a lot of the offensive linemen just because I was light. But keep that, just get strong, learn the playbook a lot. So that was really the big thing, was gaining weight, then also kind of learning the system. So my redshirt year, so I didn't get to travel being a redshirt. So just kind of sat back. Me and all the other redshirt guys would hang back and go to somebody's house or stay in the dorm or however it may be, watch the games from there. But we'd do everything else from practice to training table to meetings to, like, we were included in everything. It's not like we were secluded from any of that. But yeah, it was fun. That redshirt year was a blast, especially because we were so good that year too. We were ranked 17th in the nation at the time, and we were one game away from playing Florida in the Sugar Bowl. Still bites to think about it. We were one game away from that. We ended up going to a bowl game, played in the GoDaddy.com Bowl, so I got to travel down there to Mobile, Alabama. I wouldn't recommend necessarily go down to Mobile unless you're from Mobile, but it was a good time. It was a really good time. Stayed down there for a week, and they would just ship us out like normal practice for the week, and then every night they'd kind of give us buses. And they say, "All right, you're going downtown Mobile. Like, just be back on the bus at 1 a.m. and sort of have a good time. You guys earned it," type thing. So it was fun. That was a real first time I got to travel with the team was to the bowl game. But all the the home games, you still did everything. But as a redshirt freshman, I'm holding pads. I got to earn my spot. It's a humbling experience, getting used to what it takes to be a starter at the Division I level. And I was fortunate enough that the starting offensive line that year was practically all seniors, and they just took me under their wing. They really did. And two of those guys ended up playing in the league for. Brian Winters probably played for 6 to 8 years. He was with the Jets. He was with Buffalo. And then Josh Klein, he ended up playing with the Patriots. He won a Super Bowl with the Patriots. So seeing how those guys operated and learning from them, especially being so young, I took everything in. And I really realized that it's not necessarily about being the biggest, being the fastest, being the strongest. Like, a lot of it comes down to technique and knowing the game too. One of my favorite offensive line coach always said, like, to be a good football player, it starts from the top and the bottom. You got to be smart up top, and then you got to have good feet. Regardless of what position you play, you got to have good feet. So if you got those two things, the rest can come along. So that's really what I learned that my redshirt freshman year.
Oh, and the thing is too, like, you're never a lot of us want, like, we all obviously want to come in as a freshman, start, play every single game, but like, it's not that easy. Like, I went to the D3 and, I thought, oh, I'm going to come in, start, and I'll be like all good. And you get there and you're like, this is D3, and like, this is a lot different than high school. It's not the same. You need that learning curve. And I mean, luckily that D1 has that. I think D2 has it too, the red shirt option. D3 doesn't have that option, but the big thing is learning as quick as you can. And you brought up, it's not about being the fastest. It's not about all that, because I remember our defensive backs coach said, like, since I've been here, I've always played, for some reason, every one of my safeties has been the slowest safety I've ever seen in my entire life. And that included myself. I'm not afraid to admit it. I ran like a 4.840 if I was lucky. And he was like, but the thing is about the safeties that I've always played is they understand the defense. They have good hips. And it's like, it's the technique. It's not about how fast you are, how hard you can hit. It always comes down to technique. It's the little things that always, and it doesn't matter in football. It's in life. It comes down to the little things that are important.
Yep, absolutely. And now, and then once you figure out the game, once you start like slowing things down, once the game starts slowing down for you, then you could focus on getting a little bit bigger, getting a little bit faster, all that, and just sort of fine tune everything so you're ready. And my calling was my true freshman, my redshirt sophomore year. I got my calling. We had a guy go down. He was actually at guard. He went down, and my coach just kind of looked at me. He's like, "All right, Rita, get in there." And I'm like, "All right, here we go." And like, it's either was I ready for it, was I preparing for it, or was I not? And stepping in, and I had to trust what I had. I was totally undersized, especially moving in the guard versus tackle, and but just knowing that I prepared for it, knowing that I was working hard, and knowing that I was ready to compete. I didn't want to give it up either. So
I always remember Coach Warrington saying, you never, because like he'd always get so pissed when people were messing around during practice. So mad. Like if you were like, we're going through the defensive, like whatever, going through defense, and people were out there back there messing around. He goes, you never know when you're the next man up. Nixon could go down, tear his ACL. And I'm like, Coach Warrington, don't
wait.
Like, why would you say that? Don't even, like, that's not worth it. But he'd always say, you never know when you're next man up. And, you get that where you always have to be ready. And in college, we always called it, you have to take mental reps. Stand on the sideline. It doesn't matter if you're not in. You need to be watching, because you need to know what the call is. Like, everybody's supposed to be looking at Coach D, our defensive coordinator, when he makes the call during practice. Then you need to watch, and you need to think about, all right, if you need to make the calls, you need to do that. And it's true, because if you don't, then when you get that moment, you could fail miserably, and that moment might not come back again. Sometimes those moments only come once. You have to make the most of them. And obviously, looking at I got your not stats, but like your starts and everything from your years pulled up here. And like, obviously you made the most of your time where, somebody goes down, you made the most of it, and it definitely paid off in the end.
Oh yeah. And it's funny you bring up Coach Warrington, because like he was really the guy who set the tone for me. And
I can say the same.
and doing the mental reps, man, it really was. He would dissect their offenses down so much. He's like, all right, they run, this play 15 times, and when they're in this formation, they're going to run this play and do this. Like, what an advantage we had having that guy telling us what to do, because I'd go out on the games and I would know exactly where they were going to be. I knew exactly what play was going to run. They're like, how did you get so many tackles? It's like, I didn't, because I knew exactly what they were going to do. Like, of course I'm going to get more tackles.
Coach Warrington said when they line up in this formation, they run this play 80% of the time.
And sure enough, they did.
His defensive breakdown, like, I got a bigger packet in high school than I did in college of like what the offense does. It's crazy. Like, you look at how much time he's had to have spent, because I mean, they only got like 3 games of each opponent, but he would break it down to, they run right this many times, they run left this many times, they run this play 13 times in the last 3 games. Like, he knows it. It's like a science to him.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Then going into college, it's like one step further. It's like, all right, hey, when this D tackle, look, every time he's slanting inside, his knees cocked in, or every time you'll slowly see the safety rolling over, like and our offensive line coach would be like, he's like, is our wide receiver good enough for them to want to double cover him? And we're like, no. He's like, okay, then why would they roll over a safety though? Somebody's coming off the edge, so just knowing the small details. Yeah, I see his knee cocked, and I see the linebacker sort of staggered. I know there's something's up. There's some sort of blitz coming this way. The safety's slowly rolling back into a cloud. I'm like, all right, like I know what's coming. And it's people. I try to tell people that all the time is it's not necessarily about just knowing, okay, I got to block him or I got to, run this specific route. It's seeing the big picture. Because the wider sort of gaze you see, the easier your one-on-one becomes. If that makes sense.
The little things are the things that I started picking up in college, because I remember we were playing Wittenberg one time. I think it was Wittenberg. And they had a, pass run call that we picked up during the first quarter, where we realized if it was a run, the offensive linemen were down in a 3-point. The tackles were in a 3-point. If it was a pass, they were in a 2-point. And they didn't realize that we started picking up. Now we didn't know exactly what play they were going to run, but we at least had a cue. All right, he's in a 2-point. I need to be as a safety. We're I need to be ready for a pass, or and the linebackers and stuff. Everybody kind of had a cue. And it helped us win that game. And it's just the little things, going back to it, the little things are the things that you got to pay attention to. You got to put in the time. You got to really work on, because the little things are where it will start to help the big things.
Oh yeah, you hear it's a game of inches. It's a game of inches. It's it's really a game of inches. It really is. You take one little false step, you're screwed. You take or you make one wrong, you read the wrong key, one little thing, and you're screwed. That's why it's so fascinating. It is just a game, but it's so intricate, and there's so many little fine details to it, which makes it fun.
So I wanted to ask too, was offensive line, obviously it wasn't something that you were prepared to necessarily go into, but how was that transition from being, a multi-position athlete, but not really playing offensive line per se, tight end, somewhat, but not still quite the same? What was that transition like, going into college and, at D1 college, and having to transition from that type of player to legit offensive guard, offensive tackle?
It was interesting. At first, my steps are always just way too big, because I'm used to just firing out and going out for a route, and just finding leverage points was big. And pad level, you hear it all the time. Get your pads down, get low. Learning those things was the biggest, and just again, the leverages, I think, was the biggest thing. Knowing if I gotta block a guy out, where my leverage point is, where he can't go, where I gotta meet him to the spot before he gets there, type thing. Same with, and pass protection was definitely my best suit. I think just because I was able to move my feet pretty quick against some of those guys. But again, it's all about technique. And it took a while to get, but then you kind of finally have an aha moment where you start to get it. And that's really what happened. Because in high school, I wore 2 jerseys in high school. I don't even know if that's legal. Where I'd be. I don't know what that is. Yeah. So I wore number 55. And we'd run that wing T offense. Mm-hmm. So when we were doing that, I'd play tackle, but then we'd go into a power offense, and I'd run off the field, and they had number 82. They cut the sleeves off of number 82, and I'd go stand. Oh my God. I would stand on the sideline. One of the coaches would jump up onto the bench and slide number 82 on me. Then I'd run out and either, line up a tight end, or I'd split out wide, and they throw me the ball. I don't know if that was legal or not, but that's what we did. So then transitioning in there, just fully number 55 was felt good. Felt good to have one number going to college.
Not having to run off the field and get a jersey thrown on and then run back off.
Well, and then I was our kicker too, but I was just a toe blower.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching you do toe blows.
Oh my! Well, then Coach Seb went and bought me the 1940s cleat, like with a flat toe on it. So I'd do the kickoff, run off on the field, change my shoe, run back onto the defense. But it's ridiculous. And finally, I told him my senior, I'm like, you got to get another kicker, man. I'm not doing this anymore.
So you've obviously played, like, you guys played a lot of like tough opponents. Who was one of the toughest teams that you can remember playing? Like, kind of list some of the teams you played, but who do you think was like the toughest opponent that you guys had while you guys were at Penn State?
Yeah, well, because we played, let's see, we played like LSU, we played Alabama, played Ohio State, played Illinois, Minnesota. So it was really a lot of Big Ten, SEC schools. We'd go in and play, and by far, not even close, the best team that we played. And I hate to say this because I'm not that big of a Buckeyes fan, but it was Ohio State that year, and it was the year they won the national championship, 2016.
Well, that really makes sense.
And what sucked even worse is the week before was the week they lost to Virginia Tech, and then we went and played them the following week. And we're kind of watching the TV, like, because we know we don't have that big of a chance. Like, realistically, like, we want to go into every game thinking we're going to win, but we kind of know this is a big one. And then they lost to Virginia Tech. We're like, oh, fuck, they're about to come in here and just throttle us. And sure enough, they did. But they were so stacked. First play looking across the line is Joey Bosa. So I'm like, all right, and we're just watching them all through film all week and breaking them down and seeing like really how good they are, how fast they were. But yeah, they were real good. Bosa, he was definitely the best player I've gone up against too. Because I would like to say that I was a good college football player. And I held my own against a lot of people. I challenged a lot of different guys. But he was one where I was like, I'm a little out of my league here with this dude. Because all I remember is the very first play of the game. We were running a zone my side. So it was just man-on-man blocking. Just got to get him out of there. And he's in a 4-point stance, and like his arms are massive. I'm like, all right, I've seen like big arms before, like no big deal. And in my mind, I'm like, you know what? Screw this guy. I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna smoke him. Like, I'm gonna hit him as hard as I can. Like whatever. He's just a normal dude like me. He's just in a different colored jersey and a lot more fans. And I come off the ball as hard as I possibly could, and he just stoned me. And I'm like, oh boy, we're in for it today. And then he picked up on our snap count within the first drive. Like, it was really easy to know. Like, our snap counts was red, white, and blue. It's like on one, or if it's red, it's on one. White, it's on 2, blue, it's on 3 type thing. So we could say whatever we want, we're just listening for the color to know what snap count is. And he got it.
He was only, what year? Because when did Joey leave to go to the NFL?
He was, I think that might have been his junior, or no. I can't remember.
I can't either, because I know, well, Nick Bosa only stayed for like, I think 2 years, and then he was gone. I could be wrong about that as well, but I think Joey I want to say Joey stayed all 4 years, because I don't think he really got into the picture until he was like a sophomore, junior, or something like that.
Yeah, it was 2016. I don't know when he got drafted, but yeah, then he goes on to be NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm like, no kidding.
Not too many people can really honestly say, hey, I blocked that guy one time. He may have told me, like, stood me straight up, but you know what? I still got I got to block that guy.
Yeah, I got mine a couple times, but I think he definitely won that game.
I don't think that's a battle that's necessarily like a bad to admit that you lost.
Yeah. Oh, he got me good. Same with like Ego Ferguson. He played for LSU, and that was my true first start was against LSU.
That's a hell of a first start.
What was the second game of the season? The first game we played like a smaller school, a FCS school. Yeah. And so I kind of had that as my warm up game, and then we were right in the LSU. I was like, oh boy, that's still by far the best sort of atmosphere that I played was at LSU by far. It was their first home game of the season. It was a night game, and then like running out on the field, like the ground literally shook from all the boos that we were getting. And it was a competitive game. Like we didn't get blown out. I think it was like 30 to like 14, something like that. So the crowd was in it, the whole game, versus like when we played Ohio State, we lost by like 60. So like the crowd's out by halftime. So the crowd stayed in it this whole game. So it was fun. The loudest stadium by far was Penn State.
That's what I was going to ask. Is like, what were some of the toughest stadiums that you've played in? Because obviously, you've played some of these top-notch schools, but like, what were they?
Penn State was the loudest. Because we should. I say this, and everyone's like, yeah, right. It's like, no, we should have beat Penn State. It was like 4th and 2 on the goal line, and their student section is triple decker, so all 3 decks are just nothing but students. And when I say I couldn't hear a single thing. Our quarterback literally had to tell everybody individually what the play was. And then going up there, I mean, we're on silent snap counts, so we can't hear a thing. So that was the loudest stadium. LSU was the best atmosphere, I would say. The best experience was Ohio State, just being local and growing up an Ohio State fan. After that game, I became not an Ohio State fan for other reasons, but one place that drove me nuts was Illinois. When we played there, their band, and it was their band that drove us nuts. Their band had speakers pointed directly at us, so their trumpets would be like right in front of the speakers and just blare all the time and just like deafen us. The entire game, we couldn't hear anything, and it was just that loud, like screeching trumpet pitch that you can't get out of your head. Mm-hmm. They were awful. I hated that game. I felt like I was going to die that game.
I've always heard, though, like, that's why, as an Ohio State fan, people are like, oh, Penn State's not that good this year. And I'm like, or like, whatever. And maybe I don't know what they are like this year. I don't pay enough attention to college football anymore, but people are like, oh, Penn State's not that good. And it's like, but Ohio State's playing at Penn State on a night game. That doesn't, like, I don't think you guys understand. Penn State on a night game, especially, makes it very hard for any team. Like, that's where you see the quarterback going up and literally walking from left tackle to right tackle, yelling something. It's because nobody can hear a damn thing. It gets loud there.
The home field advantage it's a real thing. The crowd gets on your side, and then like you can feel the momentum going. It's I don't know, that superficial energy that you feel. Like, it's real. It really is.
I wanted to kind of go into, it's more of a completely kind of separate thing compared to what we've been talking about, though. But I wanted to talk about, you got to wear the number 54, and I wanted you to tell the story about it. I didn't even want to dive into it or anything because you're going to know the story about it. And I wanted you to kind of explain the story and why it was such an honor for you to wear number 54.
Yep. So my junior year, I changed from number 55 to number 54. And the reason behind that is our starting center, his name is Jason Bitsko. He wore number 54. And we were a week and a half out from our first game of the season. Week and a half out, finally getting prepped up for, an actual opponent, an actual game. We're looking forward to hitting somebody else other than us. So exciting times. And then we go out to practice one day, and we're like, "Where's Bitsko at? Like, what he's doing?" I'm like that idiot slept in. I'm like, all right. And then, like, he still didn't show up. And we're like, all right, something doesn't feel right a bit. So one of our coaches sent one of the GAs out to his apartment to go wake him up. And all we see is the GA come running onto the field, and he just collapses in our coach's arms. And we're like, okay. Like, something definitely isn't going right here. And immediately all the coaches left. left the field, and we were just kind of out there on the field, like what the hell is going on? And I don't know, 5 minutes later, they come back. They're like, everybody into the team room. Just keep your pads on. Just go right in there. And they told us, they're like, hey, Bitsko, he died in his sleep. And it was a huge shock to all of us. He was such a role model to everybody. He was, the captain on our team. He was our starting center. He was the leader of the offensive line. And a week and a half before the season, you get that kind of news. Your best friend or your friend, your buddy, your brother going down like that, just out of nowhere, took a total shock on everybody. So in his honor, and the tradition's still going on now, every year they give the number 54 to sort of the most deserving offensive lineman, one who, is the standard for like how you want a teammate to be. So they pass that jersey down every year. I was fortunate enough to be the first one to get it. It was a huge honor. It was kind of a numb feeling honor in a way, because it's like, how are you supposed to feel with that? I guess is it's sort of what was going through my head. Like, how am I supposed to feel here? Like, it feels weird. And then I wore his number, and then it's just like more emotions come in. So it was just a elevated experience, to an honor to be able to wear that and to represent him and to continue to carry that out. Actually, this year I drove up to Kent and presented the next number 54 at their sort of ceremony every year. So that was an amazing thing. Got to speak to the team. I was only going to make it a 5-minute thing, but I could kind of feel everybody, trying to understand the story, because the story's kind of left Kent a little bit. So I wanted to bring it back. And I sort of just like this, I went through the whole scenario, try to make it as real as possible, and just sort of looking around at these guys saying, hey, like, look to your right, look to your left. Like, this could be their last night. Like, you never know. Don't take that for granted, because this life's a little crazy sometimes. And it can hit you in the face real quick at any point. So I just wanted to get that point across. And then, of course, honor the kid who got it, which is really, really cool. And all the guys who got it after me, we still all connect, and it's a fun time. I still talk to his mom quite a bit, get Christmas cards, those type of things. I called her that night too, when I went and spoke to the team, like, hey, just got done with Kent, told him about Jason's story, and those type of things, and she's great. But yeah, that's sort of the story behind the 54 number. I got to wear it. It was again a really, really good honor to wear that.
Yeah, it's that'd be tough. To be honest, like you said, it's like, how am I supposed to react? Like, am I supposed to be excited? Am I supposed to still feel like, how are you supposed to take that in? And it's definitely a tough feeling. But the big thing I feel like you did, like you kind of mentioned it in a roundabout way of, it's an honor to wear this number, because now it's not that it didn't mean anything before, but now it truly means something. Like, you are honoring somebody's life by wearing this jersey, by wearing this number. So I give you a lot of props, for being, obviously, like, you weren't selected for no rhyme or reason. Like, you were selected because you were viewed as someone who was doing the right thing, like the next up, essentially, in a way. And I give you a lot of credit for that. And that's definitely not something that's easy to go through, but it's, I don't even know. I don't even really have words for it.
Exactly. But no, thank you. It was that was by far the best honor I got pretty much my whole life was that. It's really special. It is.
Going back kind of on a different note, one of the things that I wanted to ask you before we, start to kind of go into some other stuff, but, as someone who, grew up, went to a school that, like we've talked about, didn't necessarily know about going to the next level, or never like have a bunch of athletes that go there, what is any advice that, if you give any advice to a high school athlete right now who wants to move on to the next level, what would it be?
Oof. I would say, and I say this to people, not just in football, outside of football, at work, and you could take this pretty much to any situation. is to learn a little bit more than a little bit about a lot. So learn a little bit more than a little bit about a lot. So open up your scope, sort of how we mentioned earlier, knowing the game. Understand the game. Don't just understand your position. Now, you got to be proficient at your position for sure, but then start slowly going, further and understanding why the safeties move, or understanding, what your key is. Like if you're linebacker, looking at the guards, like why they're going that way, like just understanding big picture on things. And it comes down to like even knowing what down it is can go a far way. But knowing a little bit more than a little bit. Let me tell you,
forgetting what down it is can hurt you a lot.
Done that plenty of times, believe me. No, and then just stay consistent. Stay consistent with what you're doing. It is a grind, man. Like there's going to be days where you just do not want to do this, or there's days where you're just not feeling it. You're totally out of you're just in a mental fog, but you just got to stay consistent and continue to do it, because if you're not consistent, it's not going to help you out. Even when your motivation's not necessarily there, your consistency's got to be there. Because if you're consistent and that day you're not that motivated, well, at least you're consistent. And then if you're consistent and you're motivated, like it's just a double thing that brings you up. So consistency, take coaching, don't be an idiot. Like there's guys who just backtalk coaches. Like I promise they're not there. They're not your enemy. They don't want to lose either. They see something in you. If you're getting yelled at, it's for a good reason.
The consistency, like when you talked about the motivation and consistency, I've made an episode kind of based off of that in a way. That's the thing is, you look at people that go to the gym, how many times, and I feel like we've all been through it, how many times have you skipped the gym, one day, but then you skip the gym the next day, but then you skip the gym the next day, and you kind of fall in this funk where you just quit going to the gym. It's honestly what happened to me. I just quit. I was like, oh, I'll go tomorrow. Oh, I'll go tomorrow. And then I'm not going anymore. Yep. I canceled my gym membership because I realized I'm paying for something that I'm not even going to. Partially I was busy and with work and excuses, but also like I was like, I'm getting enough work out of work. I'm good. But it's the consistency. If you're consistent, it makes up for the lack of motivation. The times that you don't want to go do something are the times where it is most important to go do it, because otherwise you're going to literally fall into a funk of this habit, this negative habit. If you don't just stay consistent, whatever it is, just stay consistent. Like reading a book, tell yourself, I'm going to read 10 pages a day. It's not that much, 10 pages a day. But if you were like, oh, I'm not going to read today, and then it turns, because I always told myself I would never skip the gym more than 2 days. Like I wouldn't, I'd 1 day break and that's it. But because if you skip 2 days, then usually it turns into a habit of I'm just not going to go. You have to, the consistency will make up for the lack of motivation.
Yep. Or you try to, and you're like, well, I'm just going to work out really, really hard today, then I'll be good like the rest of the week. It's like, it doesn't, like, is it better than nothing? Sure. But I always compare it to like brushing your teeth. Like if you brush your teeth, say you're supposed to brush your teeth in the morning, at night, every single day. So you brush your teeth 14 times a week. Like you can't just brush your teeth 14 times in 1 day and expect to be good the rest of the week. Like, you know what I mean? Like you gotta stay consistent with that. And like, even if you want, and if you want like pearly white teeth, you can't just do that for 1 week. Like you got to do that on weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and that's where you're going to see the results. Finally, it's a patience game. So tell everybody you got to be patient, got to be consistent with it.
But I feel like this is a perfect time to move into what is it? RB Performance? Is that what it's called now?
Yep. So RB
Tell
Performance.
us about that.
Yeah. So right out of college, like so I took a pretty serious injury in college that pretty much ended my career. Had a good chance, had a a realistic chance to make it to the next level from college. Whether that be, some of the agents had me day 2 draft picks, some of the agents were closer to free agency draft pick. Kind of, who knew? But I was kind of naive to it. I was like, I think I'm going to make the league. Wasn't really necessarily thinking about the next job or whatever. And then once I got hurt, things ended. 8-month sort of rehab on a hip. So I was kind of panicking. I needed a job. So I just called my dad up because he worked at this NetJets place. I'm like, hey, they hiring by chance? I need a job. And so I got in and I just got really, really lucky. I'm extremely fortunate to be at that place. But it's in the aviation world. I knew nothing about the aviation world. I went to school to be in kinesiology, in human movement. I just love how the body works and how it moves and how you can make things better, how you could do that. And then with I had 3 total surgeries because of football. So that got me really into sort of the physical therapy side of things. So that's when Brittany, my wife, and I decided to create our own company and do personal training. Is really what it was, just a personal training company. And we train all kinds of different people, from brand new beginners, they've never been into the gym before, to I had a couple Division I athletes who worked out with me over the summer before they went on to school. One was a wrestler, one was a football player before they went off to their first years at college. So it really depends. I love all of it. My biggest sort of thing I hang my hat on is just stability and longevity. That's what I'm looking for. Is I need to make sure before you're touching a barbell, any heavy dumbbells, anything like that, I'm making sure your joints are okay. Do you have good mobility within your shoulders? Is everything secured enough up for me to feel comfortable to put you under there? Like, you might feel comfortable. I'm like, no, just put me under the squat rack. Like, I can squat, or I can bench, I can do whatever. Like, no. We're going to make sure you're stabilized everywhere else. Before we do that, I'm not trying to get anybody hurt. They don't want to get hurt, or they don't want to get hurt again. I got a kid, he had 3 ACL surgeries. You probably know him, Robbie Montagny. Yep.
My girlfriend actually had 3 ACL surgeries as well.
Yeah, geez. So yeah, he was super unfortunate with that. But he reached out, so definitely wanted to hone in on his knee, make sure everything was good. And he's been with me for a while now. But it's so interesting seeing different people and seeing different lifestyles. Because we are so against the cookie cutter type apps out there where they're just like, here's a list of all these workouts you can do. It's like, not everybody should be doing those workouts, or can do those workouts, or have time to do those workouts, or have the equipment to do those workouts. So we really focus in on personalizing everybody's situation, whether I want to get stronger, or else I want to lose weight, or I got a bad knee, those type of things. And I can only work out at home. I do have gym access. There's so much to it, and it's so fascinating. Again, that's what I went to school for. That's what I love to do. I did a bunch of internships with our strength and conditioning program when I was at Kent. So I learned that side of the business too. And Brittany, she's been wanting to compete for forever. She was just about to compete and then got pregnant. And then we had our first kid. And then got through the first kid. And she's about to compete.
Up, didn't you?
What? Just too hot, man. And then after our first kid, she went after it again. We got pregnant again. So it's like, so now we're at a point. I made sure we weren't going to get pregnant again. I got the old snip, but now she's she's going to do a show probably in March. So she's very much into it. So that makes it easier. We're just kind of a tandem group, bouncing ideas off of each other. I'm more of the workout programming type guy. She's more of the nutritionist, and those types that we complement each other really well. She brings in a different type of clientele than I bring in, and she does things different than I do. Like, I suck on social media. Like, I'm just not a social media dude.
I
She's
see
all
her
about
post all the time. All I see every once in a while from you is the Reno's rants, which I wanted to get into, but I'll let you finish before we get into Reno's rants.
Yeah, so So it's a good combo that we have. And then we actually did a mentorship program through a company called IFCA. And it was just a big mentorship. And really what they taught was just all the bullshit stuff that you don't even think about when trying to start a business. All the back end systems, the small apps that are just going to help you out, the time saving things, the expectation, just sales talks, like that kind of stuff. It was definitely worth it to do that, because it did save us a ton of time being able to mainly just those back end systems that just made things a lot easier for us and made it a lot easier for our clients too. But it's fun. Right now, I'm not taking a ton of clients just because I just took a different position at my work. So I still got to figure that out. Then I'll open up a bit. I'm going to have a lot more free time now with this position. So I'm going to be open up my doors quite a bit. Brittany's been taking on a lot of clients now. She's really starting to boom. People are starting to recognize the work that we're putting in and see the results that we're giving people. So it's exciting times. It really is. Well, who knows what can happen from here?
Well, that's the thing too. You guys have a hell of a home. Is that a home gym that you guys got? Like where you guys work out most of the time? You guys seem to have a hell of a setup.
Yeah. So we got really lucky here, because I always wanted to have like a home gym or a garage gym type thing. Because I just hated the amount of time that it took me to drive to the gym and drive back. Like that's a real thing. So I decided to just build my own gym, and we just did it in our garage, and we just started buying and just small little things here.
Go too much further, I wanted to ask too, because I feel like, because that you mentioned, like, the time to drive to the gym, drive back. I feel like that's one of the things that you were obviously already somebody that was committed and like consistent with it. But did that make it easier to go work out, having the home gym?
Oh yeah. Now I definitely miss the gym atmosphere. Like, don't get me wrong. Like I do miss that. And a couple of the machines that they have in there, like I don't have those. So yes, I do envy the gym still quite a bit, but I'm very happy with what we have. And then we have just enough. And we don't need to get like crazy with the amount of things we buy either. You get just, and I started sort of a series on my social media, like, hey, like home gym items you should buy and you should not buy. Like it's real simple. People want to get crazy with a lot of the stuff, and you don't have to get crazy. You give me a red little mini band, like I can put you through hell, or a body weight.
God, I did not realize that until college. That in college they were like, "Hey, we're doing a band workout." I'm like, "A band workout? Okay, what the hell?" 20 minutes later, I'm like laying on the floor dead.
Yeah, and that's what it is. So we just started piecing together different pieces of equipment. We got lucky because we bought the bulk of our stuff not 2 weeks before COVID hit, or before all the shutdowns happened. So we were like, "Oh, thank God!" Like we did this. Like we have a gym to go to. So we got lucky in that aspect, and slowly just picking pieces apart. And really, it's about like what our clients need too. Like some of the athlete guys, like I want to have box jump, or I want to have boxes. I want to have bands. I want to have some of those BOSU balls, those type of things, just for their specific training. So I'll buy that to put in because I know they're going to use it, because I want them to use it.
What are the goals that you see with, like where do you want this RB Performance to go?
We would love to open up a gym, like a full scale gym, and whether that be private, public, we don't really know. Whether it be like kind of like friends and family only, or open it up to the public type gym, we're not sure. Still trying to figure all that out. But it's just a time thing. Make sure we're dedicating time to make realistic goals and make a realistic business plan, and ensure we have the funds to do this. If we want to look for any investor type stuff, sponsorship stuff. So that's really the end goal, I think, is to have an actual up and running gym. And I see Pataskala as a huge market, because
100%.
It's a massive market. There's no true gym in Pataskala. Like there's a couple other strip mall stuff, and like nothing against those guys either. But there's just like a couple strip malls. Like you got Old School over in like
That's
over
in
in
Granville now.
Granville now, right?
Invite only, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's in Granville. So they moved out of Pataskala, so that just opened up Pataskala even more. And now we got Intel moving in. They're in like the Johnstown, New Albany area. We have the Amazon warehouses over here, the Kohl's, like massive buildings, massive infrastructure, and massive amounts of people moving into this area. That I think it could just be a good, place to set up shop. I do, but it's just going to take a little bit of time. We want to move quick, but we want to move smartly too. Don't want to jump into something, another COVID happened and not be prepared for it.
Yeah, that's very big. I feel like a big piece of advice business wise is you want to move fast, but you want to move smartly. Like you can't just rush into it without knowing what you're doing. You got to have it planned. You got to kind of figure it out before you just jump into it. Like you have to know what you're doing. You can't just dive all in, because like that's usually where people end up failing, is they just jump into it and don't know exactly where they're going to go with it. You got to be smart about it.
Yep, exactly. And that's why we kind of moved into like the online sector too, like taking a lot of online clients as well. Just kind of figured that portion out. We've figured out the in-person quite a bit. We're getting more equipment here and there. So it's slowly building up to a spot where I think one day we're going to be able to pull the trigger.
I wanted to, before we go into the final segments of the podcast, I got to ask about Reno's Rants. I want you to kind of explain what Reno's Rants are, because every time that I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see that you pop up and it says Reno's Rants, and I'm like, oh, I'm watching this. This is definitely worth my time.
So it started because, like I said, I suck with social media. Like I do. Like I try to make things so cute and have a good caption and have a good video or have a good picture. Then I'm like, screw it. You know what? I'm gonna turn the camera facing me and I'm just gonna talk like whatever's on my mind. And I never know what's really gonna pop up into my head. A lot of them you'll see me just driving, and because like when I'm driving, I just think, like my mind just spins and I think, I'm like, ooh, you know what? Let me just talk about this real quick. So I'll just hop on and just start ranting, I guess, about who knows. I try to keep it, fitness related, but other stuff I'll just jump in. It could be life, kids, whatever. I enjoy those. Brittany tells me I'm an idiot, but that's all right.
Definitely go check out Reno's Rants on Instagram. It is worth your time.
I'm an idiot. Like I'll put that out there. I'm an
idiot. But we're gonna move into some of the final segments of the podcast. And one of the final questions that I like to ask all of my podcast guests are, before we get into Motivation Monday, I wanted to ask you, if you were 16 and could go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Ooh, I would say bring more people with you. So I would say bring more people along with you. Sort of, I was a huge leader by example. Wasn't necessarily the rah guy or anything from any sport or any activity that I did, but just showing them just sort of how to work and how those small details are important. Bring them with me. I have a lot of buddies who like I look at now and I wish I would have stayed connected more with them, or I wish I would have taught them something, or show them a different path, because I look and some of them weren't fortunate. Like I was very fortunate. Both my parents raised me really well. And seeing some of them not in the best scenarios, it's like I could have grabbed them and brought them on a little bit more, I think. So hanging on to a couple people, I would say 16-year-old me, like, hey, that guy, you see him over there, go and talk to him and learn more about them. I always try to not be anybody's enemy, should say. And so I try to make more friends, bring more people with you.
You never know what somebody's going through is something that I feel like that we've heard a lot. And, I feel like sometimes we see it and we might know it's the right thing to do, but we don't do it. Like when we're like at that age of 16, like you know, there's always those kids in high school that if you went and talked to, people would like think differently of you or be like,
Yep.
why are you talking to them? But like you said, if you'd have done it, you never know what would have happened. Like it could have changed their path because not everybody's as fortunate as what you have. Like the whole saying of, oh, you think you have it bad, somebody has it worse. It is true. Somebody has it worse than you. Like every single day, every person that you meet, most people have it worse than you. So you never know what people are going through. You should treat everybody like that. And I feel like that's something like, you know, what you said, bring people with you. That's something you learn with age. And it's it's so hard to tell a 16-year-old that. Like
Yep.
bring people with you. But like if a 16-year-old listens to that, like they will go far in life. They have a bright future.
It's amazing how interesting people are too. Like, you may not talk to that person, but then you go and talk to them and you kind of find out like their way of thinking, their way of life, their way of working, their way of whatever. And it opens your mind like, like I really like how they do that. Or then you open up to them and you guys just kind of bounce things off. I've learned that a lot in my current job. Been in management for the past couple of years now, and having direct reports and looking at them, and I've realized it's not necessarily about the work that they're doing. It's learning who they are as a person and then tailoring their work to how they are. Because you can take someone's strengths and say, well, you're really good at this. Why don't we, but you're weak at this. Let's work on your weaknesses instead of necessarily looking at, hey, you're really good at this. Let's keep leveraging this because anyway, I'm ranting again, but it's fun getting to know people. I drive Brittany nuts because now I've taken such an approach of I want to talk to everybody and learn everything there is to know about certain people, whether that's like our waitress at a restaurant or, whoever it may be. I'm always just trying to dig into people's lives, not in a nosy way, but just because I find it fascinating. I do. I love just talking to people.
Well, like you said, I really like what you said about like, let's not just focus in on like, these are your strengths. Let's see how we can use them. Your weaknesses are opportunities to grow. They're not a weakness. Like, yes, they're a weakness now, but they are opportunities to grow. And you might use some of your strengths to, leverage your weakness. But like the more, I feel like you've talked about it earlier, like the more you know, the better it's going to help you. It's the same thing of don't just play one position in high school. Because the more positions you play, because like, look, you never necessarily played offensive line in high school, and you went to a D1 college and played offensive line. Like but the more you know, the more it's going to help you in the future.
Exactly, man. It's crazy. There's so much to know. There's not a day where you can go like it's your choice not to learn something more. There's always something else to learn.
Yes, there is. And with that moves us into the final segment of the podcast, which is Motivation Monday. Motivation Monday is the point in the episode where I allow the guests to give the Roughnecks listeners a little inspirational bump to set the tone for their week as they listen on Monday morning. So what do you got, Reno, for Motivation Monday?
All right. I think I'm just going to say what I said earlier. Learn a little bit more than a little bit about a lot. Be an open book. Be curious to know as much as you can. It's going to do nothing but help you out. It's going to lead you into good directions. It's going to lead you into directions you're not supposed to go down or that you're not necessarily interested in anymore. And in my position, I've taken 6 different positions that I've been there for 6 years. And that's just because I kept wanting to learn more. And then I learned, I don't really like that side of it. But because I opened up to different sides, like, oh, I do like that side. I want to pursue that side. And that could be with work. That can be with sports. That can be with just life in general. Just learning a little bit more than a little bit about a lot. It's easier to dig a 1-foot hole a mile wide than it is to dig a 1 foot wide hole a mile deep. Go wide and grasp things, because it's an interesting world.
Be an open book. That was one of the things that you said that like stuck with me through all that, was be an open book. And here's the thing is, like, when you're an open book, here's the other thing that you need to realize is you're going to mess up. You're going to have failures, per se, throughout this. You're going to have things that don't necessarily go your way, and that's okay. Because like you said, you just learned, this isn't something that I want to go into, but this over here is also something that I kind of feel like I might like. You never know when you're going to find what works for you. You're going to mess up, you're going to have failures, but those aren't like failures per se. They're learning opportunities. That is always what I've said on this podcast. You're going to mess up, you're going to fail, but there's not a failure, because every failure you learn from. You don't know it's a failure unless you realize, oh, hey, that didn't work. I shouldn't do that again. No different than touching the stove when it's hot. You learn that as a kid. Hey, that's hot. I shouldn't touch that again. Otherwise, I get burnt. You're going to have mess ups. You're going to have failures, but they're learning opportunities.
That's right. And just really just be the best you, It's hard. Don't be just comparing yourself to others. If you want it, be the best version of you is really what it is. Keep that little kid inside of you alive. Keep things interesting.
I like that. Keep that little kid. It reminds me of the Step Brothers, Be a Dinosaur, or whatever. It's true. Like, it really is. We're quoting a stupid, funny movie, one of my favorite movies, but it's true. Like, you just be the best version of you, because we live in such a social media world where we try to keep up with the Joneses or whatever it is, but just be yourself. Just be who you are, and it'll work out in the end. Don't try to compare yourself to others. You're not better than the next person, and the next person isn't better than you. Just be you.
Got it. You got it.
But with that, I think that's a wrap on this episode of the Roughnecks podcast. Reno, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to throw your tags in so that people can follow you on social media?
Oh gosh. You see, here's my point. I don't let me look at my tag real quick. What is it? Well, if you just search Reno Reda on Instagram or even on TikTok, like you'll find I don't know any other Reno Redas out there.
I don't either, but I'll put them in the episode description as well if you guys want to go follow them.
Good deal. I'll try to do more rants. Let's see how they go.
But with that, that's a wrap on this episode of the Roughnecks podcast. You guys know the deal. Until Friday, life is hard and it's going to knock you down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Don't let that bull of life walk all over you. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Roughnecks. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Roughnecks podcast. If you like today's episode, then be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with a friend if you got some value from it. Head over to social media and follow the Roughnecks podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Don't forget to get you some of that merch by heading over to roughneckspodcast.com and subscribe to the newsletter while you're there. See y'all next week. Roughnecks out.